Hello and welcome to our special program, Embrace the AI Era, the Global Governance Initiative in Action. I'm Liang Zheng. Artificial intelligence is no longer a distant concept and a technological term. It is shaping our economies, our societies, and the way we connect with each other in the future. Along with the huge opportunities come pressing challenges: ethics, regulation, security, and responsibility. China recently proposed a global governance initiative, and today we bring distinguished guests to explore how we can build a framework for AI governance that is open, inclusive, and effective. Joining us in the studio are Professor Liang Zheng, Vice Dean of the Institute for AI International Governance at Tsinghua University, Professor Zeng Yi from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and he's also a member of the UN AI Advisory Body, and Mr. Edgar Perez, former VP for Citibank. And also joining us online is Professor Gong Ke, Executive Director of the Chinese Institute of New Generation AI Development Strategies. Now, welcome to the show, gentlemen. Professor Liang, hello. So China recently proposed a global governance initiative, or a GGI. So how this GGI can guide the AI global governance in the future? And also we know that the global governance has faced so many challenges right now. Is AI the answer to those challenges or new challenges that bring to all of us?
I guess the GGI could be very helpful. I think the initiative to improve the global AI governance, so system building, because we think that now what's the impressive challenge faced by AI global governance. So it's a different maybe interest among different countries. So as well as uncertainty. So we faced, I think, due to the fast change of this dramatic technologies. And the GGI adopts the ideas. So we should build inclusive, balanced, I think, a system to treat with this kind of dramatic challenges that all countries faced, not just use win or lose, I think, the ideas to treat with this. I think that will be very helpful to adopt these ideas into the governance of AI globally. I guess that's the very helpful guideline to supervise and to improve the AI global governance in the future.
Right. And Professor Zhang, you also work for UN, and you provided consultant advice to the UN AI Advisory Body. So when we're talking about global governance, we know this dialogue between the global governance framework has been taking place everywhere, including the UN and including the G7 or G20. Also, we saw this. The EU has the Artificial Intelligence Act. So how should we promote a new framework that is more inclusive and to make sure that every parts of the world can involved in?
Yeah, I think inclusivity is really important in a way that you cannot expect to solve all the problems within a single platform. So the role of UN is really to play a core role, but not to act on everything on their own. So as you said, G20 and also BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization, they solve their own problems within these multiple countries. But they cannot gather all the countries and regions all together. So I think the role of the United Nations is really to weave all the efforts all together and to inspire everyone to contribute. So their role, as I said, they do not actually encourage everyone. They actually inspire different mechanisms so that each and every of the international organizations or intergovernmental organizations have their own role to contribute to the global landscape of AI governance.
So Professor Gong, AI has a great potential to advance sustainable development goals like reducing poverty, transitioning energy, and protecting the environment. However, it can also cause negative effects such as increased energy use, digital divides, and unemployment. So how do you see the dual role of AI in promoting the SDGs? What strategies are being used in China to balance these opportunities and challenges?
When we talk about the AI development, we should think about the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, by 2030. So this is a common goal for the whole world. And unfortunately, the implementation of these goals is very unsatisfied. Last year, in the United Nations, is adopted a very important document, which is called the Pact for the Future. The first annex of this Pact of Future is a Global Digital Compact. The very first sentence of the Global Digital Compact is that digital technology are dramatically transforming our world. They offer immense potential benefits for the well-being and advancement of people and societies and for our planet. They hold out the promise of accelerating the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals. However, as you have mentioned, on the one side, they have great potential to accelerating the SDGs. For example, the energy transition, the water safe, clean water and sanitation, and so on and so forth. But they have another side. The negative side gives negative impact to the Sustainable Development Goals. I think the negative impacts mainly in two. The first is exacerbating the digital divide. The second is the environmental footprint. The State Council for Development and Reform has released a dedicated document to guide the power assumption of AI, to encourage them to increase the power efficiency on the one side, but to use more green renewable energy on the other side. So we call it digital and green dual transformation. China has initiated a very important resolution, which is titled Enhancing the International Collaboration on Capacity Building for Artificial Intelligence. In this framework, to implement this which is adopted by the I think it's adopted by the United Nations 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly 2 years ago. And to implement this resolution, China has taken real actions. The Chinese Association of Science and Technology has supported a very, very important international initiative. We call it Engineering Capacity Building for Africa program, which is a AI plus engineering program to enhance the capability of African engineers to catch up by the benefit of AI.
So, Mr. Perez, you're coming from the private sector and you provide this consultant to many companies. Why this conversation around AI, global governance is so critical at this moment of the time? Why this timing is so important, especially for the emerging markets like China and other emerging markets around the world?
When we talk about AI, we're talking about transformation that is going to be completely different to transformations before, much significant like electricity hundreds of years ago. So given the fact that we see this explosion of new applications today, it's very important now for government and entities worldwide also to be able to see what's happening out there, what are going to be the applications of this, and how we can guarantee that we build public trust in this technology. We need to make sure that this technology is going to respect three different factors: transparency, accountability, and fairness. Otherwise, we're destroying public trust. The applications are going to be significant. There are going to be applications in every imaginable industry today. Yet, to be able to take advantage of this first generation of AI, we need to make sure that we trust this technology, that it's going to really help people. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about with technology.
Right. So, Professor Liang, when we're talking about global race of artificial intelligence, we know there are some countries that with advanced technologies, but many of the others are, for example, like developing countries that are just the followers for this technology. So one word that is inevitable when we're talking about this issue is governance gap or technological gap. So we admit there is a huge gap between those countries, and how can we how should this global governance system be formed in order to prevent this AI technology from exaggerating this gap?
Yeah, I think that GGI give a very useful, I think idea how to achieve this ambition for I think all the countries, either developed or the developing countries, to have this kind of capabilities to use AI to benefit the people. I guess if we want to benefit from which, I think three pillars we should adopt. So first, we should have the ideas that every country are equal to access this kind of technology. So for example, the open source, I think systems will be friendly, I think not only for the developed but also developing countries. And second, we should I think build the multi-learning platforms, just as GGI propagate, just as UN platform want to facilitate this kind of exchanges of knowledges as well as practices. And thirdly, we should have the capacity building, I think programs, just as China advocated 2 years ago in the UN Assembly to kick off this program and to fertilize not only the talents, but also I think skills for the developing countries, how to develop, apply, and govern this of technology.
Okay, Professor Gong, so you have mentioned that you participated in the Engineering Capacity Building for Africa program, which is initiated by the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. What specific challenges does Africa face with the emerging technologies like AI?
Yes, again, Africa is now really lagging behind. But among many factors, one important factor is engineering capacity, because it is engineering and engineers to implement the science and technology to solve the real problems, to enhance the productive quality and efficiency. So for Africa, it is very, very important to strengthen the African engineering capacity so that African engineers could make full use or to seize the opportunity brought by AI system to catch up. The Chinese Association of Science and Technology, which is a national member organization of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, which is a worldwide federation, to which I lead a special task force for a very special initiative, which is titled Engineering Capacity Building for Africa Program, which is in the framework of United Nations International Decades of Science for Sustainable Development. Early this year, we have launched this program in Nairobi, Kenya, with the very first trial training, which is on we will call it the AI in engineering practices. 50 Kenyan engineers from workplaces has paid by themselves to attend this meeting. They show high interest to learn what AI is, how can AI help their engineering practices.
So, Mr. Perez, let's get back to this question, the discussion about the developing countries. There are so many developing countries with very limited source in terms of AI technology. So how does those the developing countries with limited resources can participate effectively in this dialogue around this AI governance without compromising their own economic benefits?
Oh, let me tell you a story. I am from Peru. As you know, we only have 33 million people, so it's a relatively small country, even in the context of Latin America. Now, when you look at a small country like Peru, obviously we don't have the companies like America or China have. So in that case, we need to think, what's going to be the ideal strategy for such a country in this battle? At the end of the day, we're not only speaking about AI, we're talking about technology. So in general, every country will need to find an angle where they can actually play a role. Today, for AI and for these new technologies, we need power, processing power. And for that, we need building data centers. There are certain conditions that are ideal for building data centers, and that's why we see many of these centers built in, for example, in deserts, dry areas, because we need to maintain equipment that is very expensive and obviously consuming a lot of energy. From that standpoint, there are some regions, for example, in Peru, that would be ideal to create data centers. That could be a potential angle. Another angle for many of these countries is actually to leverage the opportunities provided by open source. Obviously, you don't want to start using models coming from OpenAI because you know that we'll have to pay. Every time that you access this model in your application, you will need to pay because you're using an API, an interface coming from OpenAI, and equally with any closed model. On the other hand, if you're going to be using an open source, then you can allow companies, developers to start using these applications to create applications for the populations. And that's actually building on the developments that other countries have done. At this moment, there are dozens of models that are available open source, meaning that companies in these countries, for example, don't need to pay directly to access. They still need to develop the infrastructure to run these models, and that is true. But nevertheless, the cost will be reduced, meaning the opportunities to realize the potential of AI is now available for countries all over the world.
Right. It sounds a little bit like this today's manufacturing supply chain, right? Is that each countries have to find their own position in the supply chain.
There was a Harvard professor, Michael Porter, who 30, 40 years ago popularized the context of competitive advantage. We need to find a place in the world where we are competitive.
Okay.
But this is also related to sovereignty, where GGI is also talking about. So actually, every country has their own culture. So they have their own sovereignty to build their own AI within their culture by using their data and the culture and society right there. So it's not fair that all the language models is provided by only the most powerful countries. So they will have to use this open source paradigm as well as their data and their cultures to build their own. So I think this is also the core for GGI.
Right, and I also want us to focus on this open source issues.
Yeah.
So because when we're talking about China, everybody's talking about DeepSeek, so open source initiative, this model of the open source. They can provide this large language model to the rest of the world. But is the open source the future of AI, or is the AI global governance? Should we ask everybody to open source to open their database or the large language models to public access? Is that the only way or the pathways to the future?
The pros is that it raises transparency. So before DeepSeek, the language models are really, really expensive, if you remember. And the DeepSeek story told you that, yeah, we can raise the level of transparency, and you don't have to pay a lot, actually, to use the services. So it actually changed the dynamics of this very competitive ecology. Well, on the other side, like I said, the downside is really that how can we actually keep ourselves safe and secure, that open source bring us to sort of risky scenario that when we share the source code, the data, can we actually get ourselves prepared? So actually, you will have to build a very powerful safety guard to actually make the language model a lot safe. So as I said, I think this is still open, and we'll see what's going to happen.
Professor Liang, until now, this artificial intelligence has been led by the tech giants around the world. And we know the main global forces of artificial intelligence research has been concentrated in the hands of a few tech giants or the big companies. But how can we regulate those power of those tech giants or companies so that they can assume their responsibility in a global issue like the data privacy, like the security, and many other global responsibility?
That's a very good question. So as a researcher in the School of Public Policy and Management, we pay special attention to how to treat with relationships between the market and the government. For the governors of the emerging technologies, such as AI, I think it's now in China, we adopt such kind of approaches. So we called agile governance paradigm. So that means that for such kind of giant companies who has the advantage on the technology improvement. So on one side, we shouldn't issue the very strict regulations on their every behaviors. So in details.
To be encouraged in innovation.
Yeah, to encourage the innovation. But we should set the bottom line, just as you mentioned, the ethic. So I think it's a requirement, and the self, I think it's alignment of which are some models. So with the social values, as well as the safety controls of which in the whole life cycles, from the data absorbing, trainings, algorithm, I think design, deployment of the system. I think all of this are very necessary requirement on how to use them healthy and sustainable. So I think this is the first thing so we should do from the regulation perspective. And the second, I think, thing for the companies themselves, they should also, I think, to have the autonomous, I think, requirement inside. I think they should build this kind of internal management, so institutions. So just as I mentioned, the whole life cycles to make it so safe and accountable. And thirdly, so we should also have the outsiders, so like the I think so the economies, as well as the civil societies, who can also express their opinions on how to use, what's their willingness to use this kind of technologies. Then we can achieve such a balance among different stakeholders. I think that's what we defined as AI governance, not just the regulations. So it's an optimization among the different benefits among different stakeholders.
Professor Gong, generative AI, large language models, and other technologies are advancing rapidly, while regulation and governance often fall behind. So how can we create a mechanism to ensure governance develops alongside innovation so as not to hinder progress while effectively identifying and managing risks?
The governance is behind. That's a fact. But talking about the governance, I think more important is not the speed of the governance. More important is the direction and the goals of the governance. So the goals and directions are more important than tools and methods. We could not merely have the goals and governance. We should have methods to implement these goals. So the method we're talking about AI governance, we call it agile governance of AI. Agile governance means we keep the direction, clear state of the boundary or baseline, but adaptive to the technological development. Just 1 month ago, the State Council has released a very important document called Strengthen the Implementation of the AI Plus initiative. Premier Minister Li Qiang has also proposed this AI Plus initiative to the world to call on the international collaboration on the implementation of the AI Plus initiative. So that's a very important part of the AI governance to guide the development direction of AI for the good of people, to plus AI with real economy and make real benefit to the people. I think that's very, very important governance goals.
Mr. Perez, as we talked about, the private sector, on the one hand, the private sector needs to be regulated. They need to have the regulation to prevent the big or the giant tech giants from exaggerating this gap. And on the other hand, so we should encourage those private sectors and companies, especially small and medium-sized companies, to embrace the artificial intelligence. So what is the biggest challenge for the company side to embrace the AI, to adopt this technology?
Certainly. one of the things that I hear a lot from board members and CEOs is how we can actually optimize the application of AI in our companies. And while it's true, there are many applications that are very low-hanging fruit and that many companies are already employing AI for that. What is true though is that AI is really one part of our technology strategy, meaning that we have to use AI when it's appropriate for our company's mission. It doesn't mean that we're going to use AI for everything. It's not a hammer that we're going to use on everything. We have to think about what's the best way to use AI and to see eventually how AI can transform also our company. There are going to be many things that probably we don't need to be doing again anymore because now we can leverage AI or technologies coming in the future. So for that, inertia is a big issue. Companies would like to continue doing the way things they were doing in the past. Today, with AI and with new technologies coming in the future, we need to be adapting constantly. So adaptability becomes a key factor because that's now what's going to separate the companies that are going to be leading the future versus the companies that are going to be forgetting. And yes, you mentioned that large companies have the resources to explore these technologies for sure, but also small companies leveraging open source, for example. Now small companies can download models and they can start developing applications using these new technologies. So that doesn't mean they're going to be left out. There are applications for everybody, yet we all have to be adapting to this. And now one final thing. When you think about AI, what we see today, it's only the first stage of AI deployment.
Right.
AI is evolving. This is not a final AI that we will have. Remember electricity. There were many standards before we saw the full deployment of electricity. Today, equally, in 10 years, we'll have better AIs. We will have really something that is going to be even more close to what we see called today human intelligence. That's not what we have today. Yet, we are on the path to achieve that.
And Professor Liang, so looking ahead at 5 or 10 years, in which specific area do you predict the global governance of artificial intelligence can achieve substantive breakthrough?
So like the autonomous driving, the healthcare, the energy, for all of these kind of systems, if you want to use these technologies, you must set the bottom line, the safety standards at first. Otherwise, they will not be used, I think, in the real world. I guess that's the most potential and the most required. So I think so governors maybe so tools we need so in the future. And for the second one, I guess so is more comprehensive governance structure worldwide on the global level. Not only I think such bodies like UN. UN just so declared to build I think the independent scientific panel and also to facilitate the international dialogues on AI governance.
International collaboration is really important. What we don't want to see is that risk happening again and again and again in different countries repetitively. So safeguard and joint testing and experience sharing across all the countries is extremely important. Actually, it takes the world all together to make ourselves safe and for our next generations.
Well, thank you so much for your insight. And as we embrace the AI era, global governance is not just an idea, but a shared responsibility and a work in progress that will eventually ensure AI truly benefits all of humanity. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.